Hi, I'm Catherine Comden, Behavior Program Manager at Willamette Humane Society. On this episode of Pets and People, we'll answer the burning question, who let the dogs out? And you'll get to meet Henry, a special collie who functions as a canine social worker to bring out the best of shy and fearful dogs. Does your dog like other dogs? How can you tell? Are all dog parks safe for your dog? How does Willamette Humane Society use playgroups to evaluate dogs and enrich their lives? We'll be chatting with certified professional dog trainer Lee Nichols about all of these topics and to help you understand and enjoy your dog more. If you like dogs, you'll want to tune in for this week's Pets and People. Well, Lee, I'm very excited that you're here today. Thanks for coming and joining us on our Pets and People show. You are a certified professional dog trainer, knowledge assessed, as am I, and we're part of a very small group of people here in Salem. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about what that means?
So in order to be a certified professional dog trainer, knowledge assessed, you know that the trainer you're working with has had a lot of hours that have been logged and documented in certain disciplines around dog training. We've also done a rigorous exam process that measures our knowledge around the science around dog training. So anyone can train dogs, say they're a dog trainer, but in order to be certified, you have to go through the assessment process and meet the benchmarks.
Yeah, and even to sit for the exam was rigorous. You had to show 300 hours of instructional experience so that it's not just the first people out the gate go study a book and then become a dog trainer. They're really screening for people who have some experience. And one of the things I love about you the most is the experience that you bring to Willamette Humane Society as one of our most involved volunteers over the course of the time that you've been there. How long have you been involved with Willamette?
I worked for Willamette Humane Society for about 2.5 years, okay. And that was back in 2007, 2008, and I have volunteered ever since.
Wow.
In various capacities. So.
Right.
Gosh, if my math's right, about 8-9 years now.
Yeah, fantastic. And one of the things that you're doing for us currently every single week is helping out with playgroups. And I'm super excited about that. Tell us what playgroups are.
So playgroups are simply letting the dogs out of their kennels and, well, I shouldn't say simply, right? It's a lot more to it than that.
Let's just turn them all loose. No, that's not how it goes.
We let the dogs in the playgroup and let them interact with other dogs in a supervised way. Okay. And we have two objectives when we do the playgroups. One is assessment of dogs' behaviors. It allows us to get a lot of information about the dogs.
Right.
And then the other thing is just letting them get out and do what dogs do, be in a natural environment with other dogs playing. Right. Dogs were not meant to live in kennels. It's great, Willamette Humane Society is a great place, but living in a concrete box with a gated front, that's not what dogs are meant to do. So it gives an opportunity.
It can be really frustrating for them to watch dogs go by, watch people go by, and yet not get to interact with them. Yep. And so the playgroups are a great opportunity for the dogs to be with other dogs and be a dog. But not always do they want to be there. And so we're going to talk in a little bit about sort of how to make that determination whether dogs want to be there or not. But in your experience with the playgroups that you've run, about how many dogs get out during a shelter dog playgroup session?
Hopefully every single dog that is able to get out. I mean, that's the idea. If the dog has, not freshly had surgery or does not have, kennel cough or a contagious, illness that they could give to other dogs, if none of those things are true, we try to get them out into playgroup, because a lot of dogs that present in their kennel, you say, oh, this dog hates it here. They don't want to be in the shelter. Maybe they don't even like people. Those are the dogs we love to get into playgroup, because sometimes those dogs love other dogs, and that gives them that outlet for socialization, to run off some energy, just, improves their kennel presentation as well.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. How do you figure out whether the dog wants to even be in there?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing is, defining what means they don't want to be in there, right? So we have dogs that go on to playgroup all the time, but they never play with other dogs. But they don't mind other dogs. They don't mind sniffing around in their corner of the yard. If another dog comes up, they'll maybe give a butt sniff or just some appropriate interaction. But that dog still has a benefit to just being out there in that group, getting some sunshine, enjoying the environment. Now, there are other dogs that, could even be stressed out or even aggressive with other dogs, right? So those dogs, we're going to try them in playgroup. We're going to make sure it's a safe, managed environment. We're going to think a lot about what dogs we're placing those dogs with if we're unsure about, whether they're going to enjoy the playgroup. And let's say we have a dog goes in and they're aggressive toward other dogs. Great. That's not a dog we're going to put in playgroup anymore, but at least trying to give them that interaction gets that information. Cool. We know now this dog has all these different behavioral markers in this circumstance. It's good information for us to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, we have been able to turn some dogs around with the playgroup. And so we might start off with a dog. Not too long ago in one of the playgroups I was running, we had a dog come into the shelter who was clearly very fearful and had been under-socialized, and I could tell because when he came in, we have a catch pen area where the dogs are able to come in for us to assess how they're going to be in the yard or what their behavior will be like. It doesn't give us a complete picture, but it gives us an idea of whether they're going to be welcoming the other dogs or not. Well, this particular dog was a young German Shepherd who came into that little catch pen area and completely flattened his ears to the side. He backed up against the fence, against the backside, tail totally underneath, totally pinned back, and defensive barking. I mean, he was just completely freaked out. And so I read that it was defense, not offense. He wasn't looking for a fight. He was just asking for more space. So I had one of the volunteers take him out and put him in a yard nearby where he could just watch. And then I was able to get the other dogs in the yard romping and playing. I started running around with them and kind of getting them being all silly with one another. And before you know it, this dog, this German Shepherd, started looking and going, well, maybe that's okay, and a little bit of tail wiggle, and he'd kind of check us out after about 15 or 20 minutes of him just watching the dogs playing in the yard. I could see that he had lightened up considerably, so I brought him back in with certain chosen play partners that I knew I could trust, and those helper dogs are so important to what we do. And sure enough, by the end of that session, he was starting to think that maybe he could play. And in the subsequent playgroups that he came out to, he got better and better at it, and you could just see him start to blossom and be thankful for that.
Right, and that's exactly right. And it's not an unusual story. We see that frequently. And, I often think as good as we are as trainers at identifying dog body language and doing what's best for the dog, ultimately we don't speak dog.
That's right.
But other dogs speak dog, right? So those two dogs were playing, guess what? They spoke dog. And Rain's like, they speak by language, right? So we do see that a lot. It's one of the great parts about playgroup for the dog and also playgroup for volunteers too. Because what better reward for me as a volunteer than to see that dog make that breakthrough with that dog and get him ultimately get home.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? And I think it's really rewarding for the volunteers, and that's a great segue. So we're going to bring in Linda and her dog Henry. Hello, Linda.
Hi there. How are you guys today?
Hi, Henry. How are you doing, buddy? So this is Linda Crosby, and she is a longtime volunteer at Willamette Humane. How long have you been there, Linda, as a volunteer?
It'll be 15 years this June.
15 years is fantastic. That's wonderful. And Henry hasn't been there 15 years. How long has Henry been around?
3 years.
He's 3 years old. Well, he is just so lovely. Tell us about Henry.
I got him as a puppy.
Okay.
Sort of my bucket breed. I'm getting older and I know how their lifespan is.
Okay.
So wanted to get one. We can just grow old together.
And you've done quite a bit of training with him. He's come through the puppy classes at the Humane Society, and
we did it twice.
Okay.
I figured, he'd just keep him socialized. And
yeah. Definitely, and you obviously did a great job with him. He is super social with both people and dogs, and so you do bring him to the public play groups that we have. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in that?
Well, we had a visit from Aimee Sadler back 5 years ago, maybe. 5 or 6 years, and she helped us get them started.
Yeah, Aimee Sadler does the Dogs Playing for Life, and she tours around the shelters and does training just for what Lee was talking about, all the benefits of bringing the dogs out of the shelter and into a social environment. And then we've expanded that to allow the public to bring their dog to a well-run, supervised playgroup opportunity where we can do some assessments for the public to find out whether their dogs actually like being around other dogs. Does Henry? Is that something he enjoys?
I started him when he was young. I started him on the small and dainty side.
Okay.
Just to be safe with him. Didn't want him to have any bad experiences. So we started there, and he's just kind of hung out there, and every once in a while we throw him in with the bigger guys. He lives with bigger dogs, so.
Okay. So are all of your dogs playgroup dogs?
No. I bring Will, who is a very fearful dog, but he's been coming to playgroups for 3 years now. I've had him 4 years, so almost 4 years.
Have you seen a benefit for Will in coming to the playgroups?
People-wise, because it's people that he's fearful of.
Okay.
So every once in a while, we get a new person helping with playgroup, and he knows. He goes, "That's not unusual." I haven't
seen that person before.
He kind of gave you that look when we brought him back.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we've seen that with the shelter dogs for sure, where the dogs facilitate one another in playing, and then everybody relaxes. And then since that dog's going up to Lee, well, Lee must not be a scary guy after all. And so then pretty soon the dog who's shy or fearful is also coming up. So that's a neat thing that happens. And I know that I always love having Henry around when we have both shy and fearful dogs who they might not want to interact with other dogs, but they see Henry walking around going, "Hey, this is cool." And before we know it, we've got those dogs coming out of their shells and being super social. So it's a fantastic opportunity. So as a pet owner, when you're bringing your dog to a playgroup, how is that different than taking your dog to the dog park? Because some people would say, well, why not just go to the dog park?
It's supervised.
The supervision?
Yeah. Because I think at a dog park you can kind of get lost in your conversations, and which is nice to have because it should be a social thing for the people also. But so it's nice to have that. Not employees, but the volunteers in the playgroup area watching your dog for you, so you can talk and visit. And
we certainly do that. We do that at Yappy Hour, which is one of the events that we have at Willamette Humane. We do that once a month during the summer months, but also every week on Sunday mornings. Lee helps facilitate a public playgroup, and I think currently we have between 5 and 8 dogs that are part of that.
Yeah, at least.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's some brothers and sisters there
that are coming in. Okay.
Yeah.
And so how is that different from your perspective than people taking their dogs just to a dog park?
Well, thanks. Henry's going to answer.
Henry's going to have, Henry's got an opinion.
Well, there's a level of predictability at the supervised playgroups that you don't get at the dog park.
Okay.
Most of the dogs at the dog park are great and they're social, and that's why people bring them there. But, there's definitely people who, get a new dog and say, well, I'm going to go to the dog park with my dog. That's what you do with dogs. And maybe that dog doesn't want to go to the dog park or isn't good at the dog park. So there's that variable that you have. At the supervised playgroup, not only is it supervised, we also have trained staff there. And we have the skills to not only observe and, make good matches with the dogs, but we also, use tools to steer the dogs, right? We don't dictate what the dogs do. The dogs are all responsible for their behavior in playgroup, but we're responsible for how we react to that, right? So steering the dogs to make good choices, right? Dog running up and down the fence, not necessarily a bad thing immediately, but we know where that's going to go, right? So that's a behavior that will stop so that it doesn't turn into a naughty behavior.
Right, and so I think it really matters too when we're looking at different dogs' play styles. Linda had talked about how with Henry she started out on the mellow side. We kind of have 2 major yards that are running.
Right.
We have the mellow side, and those are the dogs that don't want a lot of physical interaction with one another. Maybe they're just going to mince around and sniff, or maybe dance at each other a little bit, but no physical contact. And then there's the other yard.
Yeah, and so in the other yard is we call it the rowdy yard, or the big dog yard. And those are the dogs that really like to play and kind of have more contact with each other. You know, what most of us would think about is dog play, where they're sometimes up on their hind legs and maybe they're running and chasing each other across the yard. But even in that yard, there are really 3 different kinds of play styles we look for, right? So there's rough and rowdy. And we've all seen that with dogs that are friendly, throwing each other around.
Right, those are the really physical dogs, your Labradors and Rottweilers, your big muscular breeds that really like a lot of wrestle play.
Yep. And then there's the push and pull, where, you know, lots of like shepherds, you know, herding dogs will do that, where they chase me. Okay, cool. Now chase me. And then they're just running back and forth. And then the third kind we see is seek and destroy. And seek and destroy, it starts off like push-pull, where they kind of chase each other back and forth, but that dog sometimes when it's chasing, it'll hop on the other dog and like, whoa, you know, and then just like kind of go into a little bit of rough and rowdy play. Right. So if we have compatible dogs, if we have 2 push-pull dogs, they'll love that. But sometimes you'll get a rough and rowdy dog and a seek and destroy dog, and they just don't mesh well together. So we watch for those interactions too, so we can steer the dogs into good choices.
Yeah, I like how you're making those categories. I think the audience can really relate to that. I mean, we all have watched our own dogs play, and we kind of have a feel for what looks normal for our own dogs. And so how can we make sure that what we're seeing is in fact play? What are some of the characteristics of play? I'll often have clients ask me, well, I actually had a lovely person contact me thinking that she needed a behavior consultation because her dog was growling at other dogs. Right. And once I observed the interactions that were happening, it turns out it was all in play, it was all in fun. Yeah. So we know that it's okay for dogs to growl during play, but how do we know whether it's play or not?
So a lot of it is just, you know, the savvy of understanding the dogs, right? Usually play is preceded by a nice play bow, right? So that, you know, butt up in the air, play down. So a lot of times that's preceded. The biggest thing we look for is body tension, right? Loose, wiggly dogs are having a good time.
Right.
Sometimes we'll get dogs that are playing that it's a little bit unclear to me. I don't know about those vocalizations. Are they having fun? Are they not? When that happens, I look at the other dog they're interacting with, right? Because like I said before, I know a lot about dogs, but I don't speak dog. The dog that they're playing with speaks dog. So if that dog's loose and comfortable, it's probably good.
Right.
You know,
I've definitely seen that when we've brought dogs into that catch pen area. And you're thinking, I know a lot about dogs, but I'm not sure on that one. Then the first thing I do is look at all the other dogs and how do they feel about, you know, we let Henry tell us.
Right.
Is he comfortable and relaxed, and is he inviting that dog in? And if that dog is actually wanting to play, then the other dogs will be loose and relaxed and wiggly. And if not, and it surprises me sometimes, because I'll see a dog that I think, well, maybe, maybe not, but maybe. And the other dogs are like, we don't like him. I don't want him in the yard. Like, I listen to that, right? You have to listen to them because they know. And so what are some of the things that we do then? And is that dog hopeless? Do we not then bring that dog in? Or I've had clients that wanted their dogs to be social with other dogs. And so can you talk a little bit about how we make that transition? If we find a dog that maybe we think might be a little too edgy, what sort of safety precautions can we take in bringing that dog in? So,
you know, if there's a dog we're unsure of, or even more so the other dogs are unsure of, you know, oh, Henry's across the yard when that dog's in the catch pen. That's a clue. That's a good clue, right? Because Henry typically wants to interact with other dogs. So a couple precautions we can use. Drag lines. So it just clips onto the dog's collar. It's basically a leash that the dog, it doesn't inhibit anything that they're doing in the yard. But it does give us an opportunity, if that dog needs to be slowed down, we can just reach down and without getting in the middle of, you know, dogs, we can just reach down and, you know, walk that dog back with the drag line. We also do some muzzle work as well. If we have a dog that has a history of having problems with other dogs, we'll use a basket muzzle. Basket muzzles allow the dogs to pant. It allows them to take a treat. It allows them to even have a drink of water. It just basically takes their mouth away from them so they can't cause problems. Right. And then, you know, we're always eager to take that equipment away when we're, okay, they've gotten in the yard, they're playing with everyone, things look great. Right. That just happened just last week. I had a dog that we were assessing who had a history of
being intense around other dogs. And sometimes we don't have all of the information, but our volunteer dog walkers were saying, this dog is a little edgy around other dogs. We're worried. Can you do an assessment? And I said, sure. And I brought her into the catch pen, and she looked scary. I mean, she just looked downright scary, but there was something about her. I felt like that wasn't the whole story. So I did go ahead and put a muzzle on her just for the other dog's safety. And then I brought out a dog that I knew I could trust because he was one of our shelter dogs that had been in lots of play groups. And I put them in the yard together, just the two of them. And it was so funny to watch because she went from being super, oh, I'm a little worried. And then the next thing you know, he's got her just turning upside down and wiggling all over to the point where I took the muzzle off, and they just had the greatest romp. And so it's really fun. And so a lot of people get really freaked out about muzzles, but it's a safety net, really.
Yeah. And I think also muzzles, a lot of time, it's for us. I think dogs are very perceptive. They can read our energy. And if I have that dog in there that I'm not sure about without a muzzle, I'm like, and that the energy of the yard is just very tense. But if they have a basket muzzle on, I'm calmer. The other volunteers in the yard are calmer. Whew. And it tends to go well.
You raise a really good point about why we don't let pet owners in the yard during our playgroup sessions, and why that's different than the dog park, right? When we're in with the dogs, we don't necessarily have the same social relationship with that pet as the owner does. Or if they've had a dog who's maybe been in a scrap or two, their intention and their stress sends that signal right to the dog. And then the dog is intense because mom's freaked out, and now I'm going to be freaked out too, and it just sort of snowballs into this problem. We take the owners out of the picture, we can get a better read on who that dog actually is in relationship to the other dogs in the yard. And a lot of times we can make great progress, and then the owner relaxes, the dogs relax, and everybody has a great time.
That's right.
So how do people register if they're interested in doing the public play groups?
Yeah, so the first thing that they need to do is an assessment with their dog. And you can go right to Willamette Humane Society's website, WHS4pets.org. And you can sign up for an assessment there. You come 30 minutes with your dog before the actual playgroup starts. It allows us to get your dog in the yard with a couple of known dogs so that we can say, cool, they're good to go for playgroup, or maybe let's look at some other things before we get them in a big yard with dogs. After that, clients can either pay a drop-in fee and come in individual times, or they can get a punch card. Again, same thing, just through the website. And they can bring their dog for 6 if they get the punch card.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's been a really great, I think you were the one that really helped bring that service forward. Right after I started there, you said, hey, this is a thing we've wanted to do, let's make it happen. And I really appreciate your involvement and your continued involvement in that. I wanted to talk just a little bit to the pet owners about our pet parent tip for the week. And that is, how do you know whether your dog is safe and whether your dog really enjoys being at the dog park? And so your pet parent tip today is a simple body language observation. Watch your dog's tail. The tail tells so much information, and the research that Dr. Lindsay Merkham has shared with us, she's a researcher, professor of, I have no idea. We're going to share our pet parent tip this week is how to make sure that your dog is comfortable and enjoying his experience at the dog park. And the biggest clue that you can look for is his tail position, and specifically whether or not his tail is tucked. And I know you know this already, but we've got some really solid evidence that the dogs who are tucking their tails are much more likely to be involved in a dog fight than dogs whose tails are relaxed. So watch your dog's tail, and if his tail is tucked, if he's coming to you for help, he's jumping on you when he normally wouldn't, or he's fleeing from the other dogs and trying to avoid them, then it's a pretty good indication that you need to get involved and support your dog. So call him over to you, maybe take a break, go out of the dog park for for a little while, give your dog a drink of water and ask him whether he'd like to go back in. And if the answer is, no thanks, Mom, can we just go home? And you'll notice this because the dog will either be interested in the dogs running around playing and wanting to go back, or he'll be heading for the car. I've seen this a number of times at some of our local parks, and I've actually gone up and spoken with the person and said, did you notice that your dog's tail is tucked? And they weren't seeing that. They were just thinking that their dog needed to have a doggy experience, and so they were wanting to have, they're good pet owners and they want to give him that. But the tail tells all, so there's your pet parent tip. We've done a lot of talking about how we run playgroups and that we have playgroups for the public, but I want to circle back around to the playgroups that we run at the shelter, because for our shelter pets, it's great for them. We've covered that. But I also like to think about the value that we're giving adopters coming in.
Yes. So, ton of value to adopters, right? We like to be information junkies. So it is great to be able to, talk to adopters about play style, talk to adopters about how the dog they're adopting might, not totally predictive, but what we've seen at the shelter that might relate to what they see at home. Right? Give us some advice. If we're adopting out a dog like Henry, cool. Pretty good bet that Henry wants to live with other dogs,
although
right?
Henry is not available for adoption. I think Linda would object. No,
a dog like Henry, right?
Okay.
But if we're adopting out a dog that maybe has not shown a willingness or a real desire to be around other dogs.
Right. Dogs can be solo dogs, go home solo and be perfectly happy. But the dogs that are social, we know what kind of play style they have. They can, whether they're going to mix with small dogs, big dogs, and sometimes even information about how they might be around kids and cats.
Absolutely.
Because of what we're seeing in the play group. So I really love to focus on the information that we get about our dogs in play groups, and then we can transfer that to the potential adopters. So when they adopt from us, they get a lot of information about the dogs in our care. Well, Lee and Linda, thank you so much. Thank you for bringing Henry.
You're
He's a
welcome.
fantastic boy. I so appreciate both of your help in our shelter dog play groups and in our public play group. Thank you so much for your dedication and your years of service to Willamette Humane. If you're interested in finding out more about how, you're welcome, Henry. Thank you too, buddy.
You can stand.
If you're interested in learning how to become more involved at Willamette Humane through our volunteer program, we would love to have you. And you can check on our website for our volunteer orientation dates, which are twice a month, and you can come out, and we need lots of playgroup helpers. We need people to run dogs from the shelter to the playgroups, and also to help supervise and work with the animals that we have in our care. So thanks again for coming, and we'll see you all next time.
Ready? Go. Yeah, sounds like that. This is great. As soon as she goes there, and then she so funny too.
Hi, buddy. Hi, honey.